Hello, how are you today? I hope everyone's having a great day. Today, Grandma would like to read you another fairy tale called Beauty and the Beast. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, there lived a young prince in a beautiful castle. Although he had everything his heart desired, the prince was spoiled and selfish. One winter's night, an old beggar woman asked the prince for shelter from the bitter cold. In return, she offered him a rose. Repulsed by the old woman, the unkind prince turned her away. The woman warned him not to be deceived by appearances, since beauty is found within. But when the young prince dismissed her again, the old woman's ugliness melted away to reveal a beautiful enchantress. You can't always judge a book by its cover. Just like people, we shouldn't, just because they might not be the most beautiful, dismiss them as not being of worth. The prince tried to apologize, but it was too late. The enchantress knew there was no love in his heart. He wasn't a very nice young man. As punishment, the enchantress transformed the prince into a hideous beast. Then she placed a powerful spell on the castle and all who lived there. The rose she had offered was an enchanted rose. It would bloom until the prince was 21. If he could learn to love and be loved before the last petal fell, then the spell would be broken. If not, he would remain a beast for all time. Ashamed of his monstrous form, the beast hid inside the castle. A magic mirror was his only window to the outside world. As the years passed, he fell into despair. He did not believe that anyone could ever love him. Slowly, the rose began to wither. Because he was ugly now, and so the way he used to think, ugly people weren't lovable. So he has to learn, doesn't he? In a nearby village, there lived a young girl named Belle. She was very beautiful, but Belle, unlike the other girls in the village, cared only for her books and always felt out of place. Her father, Maurice, was a reader of books too. But while Belle read about adventure and romance, her father studied technical books. Maurice was an inventor, a genius according to Belle, and a crackpot according to the townsfolk. Belle is even stranger than her father, the villagers whispered. Her nose is always in a book, and her head is in the clouds. Gaston, the hunter, who was the handsomest man in town, wanted to make Belle his wife. No matter how many times he asked, she turned him down. Gaston would not take no for an answer. He was determined to wed the lovely Belle, even though she thought he was a brainless brute. All he thought about was muscles, being a strong hunter. One day, Maurice hitched his horse, Philippe, to a wagon and set off to show his latest invention at a faraway fair. Let's see. There's Maurice on his horse, Philip, with his inventions in the wagon. With his mind on the fair, Maurice became lost in a misty forest. An icy wind whistled through the trees. He suddenly heard an even more disturbing sound, the howling of wolves. See those wolves there? Philippe bolted and Maurice fell to the ground. To escape the wolves, the frightened man ran deeper and deeper into the woods. He came to a castle that seemed deserted, and he stumbled inside. There, Maurice was greeted by Mrs. Potts, the teapot, Cogsworth, the mantel clock, see, it was a clock, and Lumiere, the candelabra. There he is. But before he had time to marvel over these strange creatures who could talk, an even stranger one appeared, the beast. When Maurice stared at the beast in horror, the beast howled angrily. Then he scooped Maurice up and carried him off to the dungeon. Oh dear. Meanwhile, Philippe, his horse, had made his way back home. Belle took one look at the riderless horse and knew something awful had happened to her father. Philippe, take me to him, she cried, leaping astride the exhausted horse. Without a pause, the animal thundered off toward the woods. He was a very brave horse, wasn't he, to even run when he was tired. When she arrived at the castle, Belle burst inside and searched frantically for her father. The enchanted objects led her to the tower, but just as she found Maurice, the beast appeared. Belle let out a terrified gasp at the hideous sight of the beast. When she realized that this was Maurice's captor, Belle begged the beast to free her father. When he refused, she bravely offered herself in Maurice's place. She offered to exchange herself for her father. No, Belle, Maurice cried, even as the beast said, done. He accepted her offer, so Maurice was set free and Belle had to stay at the castle. Before Belle could even bid her father goodbye, the beast led her to a room. The castle is now your home, he said gruffly. Belle was free to go anywhere she liked, except the West Wing. You will join me for dinner, the beast ordered. That's not a request. Still, Belle refused, and the beast stomped off in anger. She wasn't going to join him for dinner when he was so rude and mean to her. That night, Belle slipped out of her room and found her way to the forbidden West Wing. She discovered the beast's foul lair, but he was nowhere in sight. Belle was drawn to the enchanted rose she saw by the window. When she reached out to touch it, the beast suddenly appeared on the balcony outside the window. Belle screamed and fled from the room. She was scared of the beast. Her heart pounding, Belle ran out of the castle, mounted Philippe, and fled into the night. But a pack of wolves soon had the girl and her horse surrounded. Belle was helpless. She knew that death was near. Suddenly, the beast was there, throwing the wolves aside. A terrible snarling and howling sounded as the beast and the wolves battled for their lives. At last, the wolves ran off into the woods, but the beast lay in the snow, badly wounded. Back at the castle, Belle gently bound the beast's wounds. Gentle as she was, the beast roared in agony. I barely touched you, said Belle. Then she saw a look of pain on his face. I forgot to thank you for saving my life, she added softly. The beast only grunted in reply. But when Belle turned away, a hint of a smile could be seen on his face. He appreciated the fact that she was helping him and that she thanked him for saving her life. He had acted very bravely in helping her. In the days that followed, the beast tried to be a proper host. He showed Belle his library, where they read together, and she, in return, began to teach him how to act like a gentleman. Perhaps it's not too late, Cogsworth whispered to Mrs. Potts and her son, Chip, the teacup. If Belle could only love the beast, this dreadful spell might yet be broken. All these enchanted objects wanted to be returned to their original shape and form. The winter passed pleasantly for Belle and the beast. Belle thought of the beast as her dearest friend. He thought of little but the beautiful Belle. One night, while Belle was teaching him to dance, the beast stammered, Belle, are you happy here with me? Yes, said Belle without hesitation. But the beast saw a trace of sadness in her eyes. Then Belle added, if only I could see my father again. Even for a moment, she missed her father. You can, the beast said, handing her the magic mirror. Belle gazed into it with wonder, for there was Maurice trudging through the forest. But he looked frail and old. Even as she watched, her father collapsed in a heap. I must go to him, Belle cried. He might be dying. The beast heard her anguished plea. I release you, he said sadly, but take the mirror. Then you will always have a way to look back and remember me. With the magic mirror to guide her, Belle soon found her father. But their happy reunion was cut short with a pounding on their cottage door. We've come to take Maurice to Maison des Lunes, announced Monsieur Dark, director of the village insane asylum. No, cried Belle, my father isn't crazy. Gaston's friend, Le Feu, stepped forward. Maurice has been raving that you were imprisoned by a hideous beast, he said. Only a crazy man would tell such a tale. They thought her father was crazy to say that she had been captured by a hideous beast. But it's true, Belle protested. Her worried eyes searched the angry crowd and lit on Gaston. Gaston, she cried, you know my father isn't crazy. Tell them. Gaston quickly drew Belle to one side and he whispered that he might be able to calm the crowd if Belle would promise to marry him. Never, exclaimed Belle. And my father is not crazy. There really is a beast, and I can prove it. She turned to the crowd. Look in this mirror and see. The townspeople looked at the beast's reflection and grew frightened. There he is in the mirror. Gaston was furious. His plan would be foiled. He must hunt down this savage animal, he cried. Start stirring up the mob. Who's with me? We are, answered the villagers. After locking Belle and her father in the cellar of the cottage, the villagers rode off to storm the beast's castle. So Gaston wants to stop the beast so that he can marry Belle. Luckily, Chip, Mrs. Potts' son, had stowed away in Belle's saddlebag. After the villagers were gone, he used Maurice's latest invention to release Belle and her father from the cellar. What do you think they will do now that they're not locked up? They followed, and then by the time Belle reached the castle, the townspeople had broken in. Gaston and the beast were in a mortal duel on the castle roof. The beast managed to knock Gaston's weapon from his hand. Then there was nothing to stop him from killing Gaston. Nothing but the beast's own humanity. He had grown to be a much nicer person. Gaston screamed for mercy. The beast granted it and turned away from his foe. Then Belle watched helplessly as Gaston rose up and plunged a knife into the beast's back. Gaston was not a nice person. The beast roared in pain, frightening Gaston. Backing away from the wounded beast, the hunter lost his footing and fell off the roof into the fog below. Broken-hearted, Belle flew to the beast's side. "You came back," the beast whispered weakly. "At least I can see you one last time." He thought he was dying. "No, no," Belle said, sobbing as she kissed his cheek. "Please don't die. I love you." At that moment, the spell was broken, and in one magical instant, the beast turned back into his princely self. The enchanted servants returned to their human forms as well. The castle came alive with rejoicing. Mrs. Potts cried human tears of joy as the handsome young prince gathered the beautiful Belle into his arms. Mrs. Potts, Cogsworth, and Lumiere had not one doubt that the loving couple would live happily ever after. And you live happily ever after when you are a nice person. I hope the beast had learned his lesson so that he and Belle could live happily ever after. And I hope we learn to be nice people too. And don't judge people by the way they look. What's really important is much deeper than that. Remember, Grandma loves you. Bye.